Okay, so roll call. Vice Chair George Salmon. Councilmember Juan Carlos Prada.
Present.
Councilmember Eduardo Rodriguez.
I'm present virtually.
Councilmember Nick Cersey. Councilmember Brooks Esser.
Here.
Councilmember Blair Whitney.
Here.
Councilmember Kelly Mercy.
Present.
Chair Catherine Wood.
Joining us this evening, to those of you joining us in person, if you'd like to listen to this meeting in Spanish, please use the headset provided at the check-in table. Francisco will be assisting. We will now move on to public comment. If you'd like to make a public comment, please bring the speaker slip up to the clerk.
It is now time for general public comments. If you would like to make a public comment, please bring a speaker slip up to the clerk. During this time, each person will be granted 2 minutes to speak. If anyone have a public comment on any topic not on the agenda. So we do have one speaker slip submitted. When I call your name, you will have 2 minutes to speak. I'd like to call outdoors. Jeremy Ford.
Another one, I think that was, your neighbor, that one that didn't have any, was wondering if you can get prioritization for the sidewalks that is, I think, planned to talk to the city. The units, that's for the actual, seems odd, something happened in the last couple of weeks. I talked to them and said that I would come to this committee and talk to them to see if the prioritization out there. So, very good. The reason for that is that mother-in-law actually has a full disability. She's some consistency on the wheelchair, so it's really hard for us to actually take her out of the house. And we actually have one incident when she actually fell from the unfortunately, particularly wondering if you don't get a prioritization.
Call for public comments. You might have them. I'd like to call Antonio Lopez up for a comment. You will have 2 minutes to speak.
It is, radio and ready. Good evening, council members and county staff. My name is Antonio Lopez, mayor for the city of East Palo Alto, candidate for District 4 supervisor. As you all know, this November, the board of District 4 will have the opportunity to determine who will succeed Supervisor Slocum. And given the stakes of this election, I felt it was incumbent upon myself that I address you all not in a general candidate form, but directly. No special connection to this community. So much of my childhood here, whether it was trying to run office, my cousin's quinceañeras at one of the boutiques, sitting in a small office of Panamerica Airlines, so I would travel between 4th and 5th. Or it was see my uncle stand to the local ladies at the old furniture store when North Girls Community Festival. Point is, I remember this community vividly growing up. The North Rose East Palo Alto 40 years ago, when incorporated underrepresented homes of the decisions of your supervisor. I don't think it's controversial nor not afraid to say on record. North Fair Oaks is and should be. I want to just lay out 3 things that I think are important for the next elected that they should have. First and foremost, communication. One of the first pieces of advice I got when I began my career in public service was Antonio, want to get something done, go to the boss. So for me, it's important that having outreach, having staff reports, having someone at the supervisor level coming directly every week or every meeting, reporting out to you all, because it's so important to not wait for tragedies, for emergency fire, for PJ shut out the power, to be able to actually get things done in this district. Economic activation, it's important that we have high rises and have a downtown to give San Mateo of SF Mission District. We show the incentives to bring the community. Time's running short, but I want to just emphasize also parks and parking. There are very few green spaces here in this community. I know that first and foremost, being a resident of Palo Alto, we need to free up those green spaces and also free up the parking situation. Once you figure out the parking situation, everything else will follow. Economic activation, a sense of pride, a sense of purpose. So I'm here to just really emphasize that we need to help our supporting families. Let's create a Department of Family and Children Services. Let's work together to represent respect the dignity deserves. My time has expired. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you for your time. And sorry, there's all black and white, but wanted to make sure I honor this one.
Thank you for your comments, Antonio.
Last call for public comment.
We've had a couple of council meetings regarding the Field Road stop sign at Second Avenue and gone back and forth, and I have to admit that I kind of let something slip, which was making sure that we agreed on some language to provide a letter to Supervisor Slocum and the Board of Supervisors to try to get things going and make some changes. I had drafted a few things, but I just want to make sure that we are all on the same page. If we have any comments, I think we've gone back and forth about both Second and Fourth Avenue. I personally believe at the very least we need to address Fourth Avenue where Casa de Circulo and so much of the crossings happen to get to either side. I know personally, I've been affected a couple times by crossing, and so I really just want to push that we tighten up what we want that board, what we want that letter to say, and go ahead and get that letter drafted and off to Supervisor Slocum. So I thought it might be important that we just have a brief conversation. I have drafted some language, but it's not approved by all of you, so I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. If not about all of the issues, at least one. Once again, I would champion first and foremost Fourth Avenue. So I'd like to open that up for discussion.
Yeah, add to what you're saying.
Sure.
In addition to this, I also wrote a letter for the our situation. I had made it public, I had added to our agenda. So that's to be a draft, so I wanted to send the actual letter of being published now. My motion would be specific to PG that we write the letter, we all agree upon the letter. The motion would be for that, not necessarily my letter.
So okay, so my question would be, are they two different items?
Yeah, two separate.
I don't think so. What I would like to do is just address stop signs at Second and Fourth
Yeah.
first. So there,
I'm glad that this is on the agenda. I was here 2 months ago when a bunch of residents spoke to us, and really heard people that wanted a stop sign urgently, and we didn't even have to form that night, so we were ready to strike that act. But I think it's important that we put it out to the community, we're gonna talk about it, and if anyone's against it, has other opinions, that they be heard too. So I'm glad we took our time to put it on the agenda, and we didn't just rush. So are we going out of order on the agenda, and moving to item 5?
Sure. Through the chair. So I think the item number 3 is the urging PG.
sorry,
No worries.
jumping ahead.
No worries, yeah.
Sorry.
So it is, you're right, it's 2 separate. But that, we're gonna be talking about that first. That's agenda item number 3. Is the seek letter of support to District 4 Supervisor urging PG.
Yeah, I guess I go on that. Like I mentioned earlier, I wrote a letter, I understand that there's a power issue going on. And I really don't know much about it yet. I think Justin is here to speak on that, or Devin, so I'll leave that part to him. But regarding the actual letter, I wrote a draft, wanted to resend it. My motion for this today would be that the draft day letter, we all agree upon it. And I'm happy to take that on, make sure we. While we're in the ordinance, that's my motion.
Yeah, I second that motion.
So, sorry, just to clarify, are you going to draft a letter and then send it around for approval and then we publish that draft? Is that a subcommittee thing or is that a? Wait, no, that's the stop sign. Please, Chair.
Justin Mates, Deputy County Executive. I believe your council may be online, but I'm able to be here in presence today, but we had some discussions about this, about the letter piece of it. There's some technical pieces of it, and I'm also happy to talk about the PPE thing. That's one of the reasons why I'm here tonight is because I'm happy to be the latest on what's impacting the intersection of stoplights and streetlights on Oakville Road. But in general, you raised issues about how you write a letter on behalf of the council. There are multiple ways to do it. I will tell you, many other commissions, what's considered for common or best practice in a situation like this where you're not sure how everyone's going to feel is you raise the issue of the letter, the council talks about it, and you talk about the key points of a letter that you want the letter saying, and then you could, for example, appoint somebody to write the letter on behalf of the council. It would, in that situation, you need to come back to the council. You might appoint two people to write it together to make sure that it accurately reflects the discussion, and that those people empowered to write the letter on behalf of the council. That's one way to do it that doesn't, it's considered good practice because it allows for the discussion before exchanging of drafts and things that, on the agenda that might not allow for the same kind of sharing of ideas before pen to paper. So you could do that in this instance as well, just to get to the technical question. And then I'm happy to speak to the PG&E issue.
Is there another way to write the letter, get approval? I would expedite it a bit more than having to wait for the next council meeting.
You don't have to wait for the next council meeting. I believe it was agendized as an action item tonight. So you could, for example, the council could appoint, vice chair and chair to write a letter on behalf of the council. And, you might just make a motion like, that might be general, it might be specific, like with these 4 points or something like that, to just make it clear direction to folks, but it would not. I don't have the agenda in front of me at the moment, but I believe it's agendized as an action. Wouldn't have to wait till next time.
Thank you.
I wish I'd take off my attorney hat, but sometimes it's hard.
Oh, that's
So
good to
many
know.
years going in.
To the chair. We don't have to be unanimous in everything. I think it's healthy for us to discuss it, and if the majority agree, we delegate to the chair to either speak to verbally the supervisor or in letter form communicate our desire that the brand new light posts to be lighted soon and the meeting schedule, which is because people are waiting for it. So, and during the discussion, we might have some questions or dissent, and by having it in public, that's communicated too, because the supervisors, staff members here, so they're gonna hear. Majority said we need to brush this project along, and a few people raised concerns about how to spend extra money, if it's gonna cost, blow the budget or do this or that. I don't know. I think this is a good thing. I support the motion to draft a letter because it seemed like this started before COVID. In like 2020, and this is 2024. That's like 4 years. That's like a painfully slow process, and I know public works always take twice as long, and they always go over budget. And it bugs me to see streetlights not turned off. There's a public safety element of it. So yeah, I support the motion to communicate our desire to improve the lighting and to use the infrastructure as quickly as possible.
I don't have any objections to the motion, but I would like to hear some of the issues around energizing and kind of what's holding it up. And so maybe we can address that in the letter itself. See what we can do. Again, I don't know, but
I'm happy to give an update on that. So the Middlefield Road project, as you know, part of it, or a big significant part of it, was the undergrounding of the utilities. And eventually taking down those utility poles. So the public works portion of that project with respect to the utilities was to underground basically the conduit. I'm not an engineer, but I'll describe, it's essentially a big tube that was put underground. There's all sorts of things that went into that, conflicts with, other kinds of plumbing and piping that's going on there. It was not a simple project. That is now complete. All of the infrastructure that was built to take electricity, the new infrastructure, was built to take electricity from the underground electrical wires. So that's not there yet. So those telephone poles, those street light poles and the street lights and the traffic lights are not energized yet. So after Public Works finished its portion of the project, which is all but done at this point, it is now the utilities portion of the project to do their part of underground utilities. We've been keeping the utilities informed of our progress. They know the scope of work. They've been in all the meetings. The way the conduit was built and designed, all of it had input from utilities. And now the first utility that has to go is PG&E. PG&E is, I would say, we think should be ready to go. There was a funding issue. They essentially the cost of it is funded with what's called Rule 20A credits. There's a whole thing that I don't need to get into details of. We've worked through that. We've made sure that the funding is available, so that's no longer should be a barrier for PG&E. They have told us that they need their land agents to work out a couple of additional easements that they need for their project. And when that's done, they will start their project. Their project is projected to take 30 weeks. That's the physical project, that's getting the materials, it's running the electricity through the lines. I'm not going to use engineering accurate terms, but I'll describe it for you as I understand it. We do have some folks from Public Works online, and if you do have detailed questions, but essentially pull the wires through. Every single electricity user on Middlefield Road has to then have the electricity come through the new connections from the underground, not from the poles. And they would be, our understanding of it, their estimates now are it's about at least 26 that the streetlights, the new streetlights, will be energized. And I think the traffic signals around that same time frame. So roughly 6 months. We know that the Oaks community has been waiting for these safety measures. A big part of the Middlefield Road project included enhanced pedestrian traffic safety features. Many of those have been in place, but the community is still waiting, of course, for the traffic lights and the street lights. But that's kind of where things stand. It's PG&E starting their project, or once they start it, they're telling us it's going to be 30 weeks.
Is that 30 weeks to complete or 30 weeks to start?
They are telling us it's 30 weeks once they start, but they are telling us they can't start until their land agents get those last easements from a few of the adjacent. I think it's one of the adjacent property owners, and I think Santa.
I appreciate the information, and again, no objections to your letter, but and this may be a question for Tim or the council, but does PG&E have an obligation or legal obligation or any sort of thing, or what's the impact that we could do, given that they're a private company technically and stuff like that? So I'm assuming you guys are putting as much pressure already on them. Would it be helpful from this council to write that letter and send it, or are they just going to file it in a bin somewhere and just put it there?
Good question, tough question. I can't answer the legal pieces of it in terms of their legal obligation, what exactly the frame of that is. I will tell you that we have been pulling any lever and all lever that we have. We've been them at the staff level. I can tell you that my boss, the county executive, has met directly with PG&E executive level folks to try to move a range of projects forward, including specifically the Middlefield Road project. As you can imagine, there's a fair amount of frustration with PG&E, I would say, for a lot of public projects right now, and for a lot of construction projects generally. That piece of it, I've been hearing a lot that there are delays associated with the PG&E portions of projects. So I will tell you, I can tell you that we, Public Works and County Executive's Office have been doing everything we can think to do. Any letter the council would write, would not go to the PG&E, would go to the Board of Supervisors. It's not really my place to tell you whether or not it's a good or bad idea to write a letter, but that's kind of where we are. We are trying to push them at the staff level as hard as we can to whatever more eyes need to be dotted and T's need to be crossed for them to start their project. I'm not sure what ability they have to make the project go faster than 30 weeks, but we certainly are trying to get them to start as soon as possible so that time can.
I remember one of the early meetings when I learned about the Middlefield project, and there were two agencies you need to work with, PG&E and Cable, to remove those poles. And cover the, you guys made the circles for the cement, it's all ready. And I remember hearing the last one to remove it is the one that has to cover it. Question to you is the cable, I don't remember if it was like AT&T, Xfinity, whoever it was, but are those wires already underground? Is PG&E the last?
No, my understanding is PG&E is the first. So
Okay,
when they will take theirs off, they'll topping the poles, and then in general, when it works that, they kind of go where top down, last one down, have the obligation to underground their utility and then take.
okay. So,
So the overall project, I don't have an estimate for you today, I'm talking about the piece that would energize. all
Sure,
of the-
sure, no, I'm sorry, I just was like trying to understand like what the pecking order was of like, I just remember that fact. And just
And
wanted,
I think it's more than just two utilities, I think
Okay.
anybody has them.
Yeah.
Might be cable, telephone.
but I remember in the meeting, the engineer, he said, whoever is the last one to remove it is responsible for like putting the concrete, which nobody wanted to be. So I was just curious if PG was the last one. Got it, thank you.
Ever have a comment?
Hi, yeah, at first I wanted to clarify that I'm attending remotely due to a medical condition that prevents me from attending in person today. I'm sorry that I'm not there in person, but in terms of the letters, the way or on the issues, the way I see it is they're both issues that have public safety elements attached to them. And but my understanding is that the electric lighting is an issue that will get addressed. And I think we need to advocate for a sooner rather than later implementation of that. But in terms of the stop sign implementation, that is something that truly needs advocacy and planning for implementation, because unlike the electric lighting is not in the plans. That is something that perhaps needs a stronger letter from our council. And I'm not sure if a letter for the first issue, which is the electric lighting, is necessary unless the timing can be shortened by whatever constraints PG&E may have. So I just wanted to shed a little bit of light in terms of the distinctions, the distinction between those two issues. And also, I'm sorry if I didn't understand correctly, but it's kind of hard for me to hear because I noticed that we're not going in order of the agenda. We're kind of touching in both of those letters for the electric lighting and the stop signs as well. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say in that regard.
If I may, I have a couple things I think might be helpful to add at this point. The first is to address the question about the role of this council's involvement in whether or not it would be valuable for it to state the interest on the electrification issue. And I think the answer is that PG&E is a for-profit company, but it is not a private company. It is a regulated public utility, and it is a political animal like any agency that is required to serve the entire public, as PG&E is. So hearing from its customers and through the people who represent those customers is part of the process. Again, I'm not advising you whether or not to do the thing, just that it is in some way ordinary for people to advocate before PG&E differently than they do from a customer service perspective when ultimately they have the option to choose a different provider. So lobbying PG&E for attention and for resources is something that is common and expected. So that is within the realm of this council's prerogative to let the Board of Supervisors know that the community is interested in that. However, on a parliamentary issue, I do want to say, I don't know that we've made it clear to the persons in the room, persons attending by Zoom, that both of these items are under discussion and that they are invited to give public comment before the council deliberates on anything, okay? So it's really important that when the agenda says that the first thing that happens is questions from council, that's an opportunity for council to ask questions. But if we're moving now into a stage where members of the council are stating their interests, the public should be asked to speak before that begins to happen, and we need to be crystal clear to all the people in the room whether or not they should give their public comment on both of those items now before the council continues to offer its views of these matters. So I would definitely recommend that you state, for the benefit of the people in the room, that if they have public comment on either the stop sign issue or the electrification issue, they should submit a comment card and speak now before the council continues to deliberate further.
Thank you, Tim, for that. At this point, I think we should open it up. Comments forward regarding this issue.
Members of the public, if you wish to comment on agenda item, please use a hand or to join the room. Or speakers look to the clerk. We've got 2 minutes to speak at this point. Do you have a public comment on Zoom? When I call your name, you will have 2 minutes to speak. Gabriela Valencia.
Good evening, can you hear me?
Yes. We can
Hello?
hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. It's not very clear what item we're commenting on because I cannot hear very well what's being spoken in the room, but I'm assuming this is in regards to Middlefield Road lighting. And I believe that's the agenda item that you guys are discussing. I completely agree with the need to get the electrification going as soon as possible. It is extremely dark and unsafe on Middlefield Road as soon as daylight is over. And I think it's absolutely necessary for this council to advocate on the behalf of the community. I think the strongest the letter that you can do, the better. I encourage you to think of how other wealthier communities would not tolerate something like this. So please go ahead and approve the writing of a letter and send it in, but please also follow up, because if there is no proper follow-up, then the letter makes no difference to the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Public comment at this time?
No, it's back to you, Chair.
Okay, it's time as council that we possibly go forward with our any other clarifying comments, questions, or whatever else.
Listen, you may or may not know this, but mentioned PG&E was the first utility to start.
Speaking to the mic, please.
You mentioned PG&E was the first utility line. Now that they're delayed, do you have any idea how that affects other utility schedule and how much this is?
I don't have that. I don't know that they are delayed. Honestly, it was always a second part. They always had to follow. So I'm not sure if it's delayed or it's part of it. I don't have that information for now. I wish to recall on top of my head. I know when Public Works was here last time, they gave an estimate for how long. I think that was like 18 months. Maybe I heard it earlier. That was for all the utilities, I believe. So I don't know that there are further schedule impacts for it at this time, so I can't answer that. I also just wanted to clarify one other thing, if I didn't make it earlier, the new streetlights are not energized, but the existing streetlights, the streetlights that have been there should be energized and will remain energized until PG does their program. I know that's not the same thing as new ones, but I just want to clarify, it's not that there are no streetlights.
Thank you.
Sorry, Justin, so I guess, this might be a clarification point, given that PG&E knew about the Middlefield Roads project. I'm a little confused on why they haven't already taken care of all the easements that they were supposed to get a while ago, and given that it was delayed, I should have given them more time. Has that been addressed with PG&E or something else?
We absolutely share frustration with that point. They had a long time to address those issues. None of these things are good. So I share your frustration on that. I know these are issues that our teams are discussing with their team on a regular basis. I don't have the latest on that. But what I have is just their estimate. They're saying that's the thing that needs to be done, and then
Sorry, one more thing. Can they have to wait until those are done to start anything at all, or is there parts that they can start on while these easements are doing the assumption that they'll get there?
they told us that they won't start till all the easements are in place. It's a story we've heard in other aspects of this project as well. So that's what.
When this came up before, I reflected on how sometimes poor communities get treated worse than rich communities, and I use as an example. In front of my apartment building, there's a AT&T box on the sidewalk, and when they upgraded to fiber, they put another box further blighting my view. And they abandoned in place the first box, and they're not gonna remove it because, you know, we're not important. And I expressed my fear that worst case scenario, we're gonna end up with chopped down electrical poles, with a stump sticking in the ground because everyone's like, not me, not me. So I raised that concern, and I also have a concern in general about the California Public Utilities Commission and PG&E. My bill's gone up a lot, and I just live in a little bit of apartment. And I see that they get these rubber stamp approvals for every rate increase that PG&E asks for. I almost feel like the Public Utilities Commission is like a captured agency because PG&E gets political donations so prolifically to members of the Assembly, State Senate, up and down the slate. You know, there might even be candidates for supervisor. I don't know how deep the reach is, but I'm very, very cynical sometimes. And I'm hopeful that we get first-class results and we don't get treated like second-class citizens, which I see happening with these other utility boxes. So I really do want to send a message to PG&E and ask the board of supervisors, the county staff to help us advocate, because we don't have lobbyists, we don't have advocates in Sacramento, and PG&E does, or Christians, they get to do what they want, but if we can push them, and you can embarrass them and sometimes treasure them. I just don't want to see a great project diminish at the end because they half-ass removing the wooden poles. They leave some utility boxes in place because it's just convenient. So that's my feelings.
If I could, think part of your comments is not really you respond to, but with respect to whether or not this project will be somehow given less attention or end up with results that wouldn't be common to other places. I will tell you, this is one of the biggest and most important projects our public works team has ever worked on, one of the most complex. I can't tell you hundreds, if not thousands of hours, in fact, I'm sure it's thousands, everyone, thousands of hours spent on this project. Our teams continue to meet regularly with all of the project partners on this. We won't give up until the project is done, pursuant to the designs that we all agreed upon, what the community expects, what the community we deliver. Certainly no one in public works will give up. I can promise you that my boss and the board would not allow it to be so that anything would be, as you say, half-assed on this project. It is frustrating. These are not county entities. These are not entities that we control, but we are doing what we can and we continue to work at these issues. But I absolutely appreciate the frustration behind.
We have one other comment from Ever. Ever, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to remind our council that last month, when this topic of adding stop signs to Middlefield Road came up, there was plenty of public comment, both live and virtually, given in support of adding stop signs along Middlefield Road. I believe one for sure was at Second Avenue in Middlefield Road, and the other was probably, I think, at Dumbarton, around there. So if we don't see much public comment in support for that tonight, perhaps it is because, you know, the people who came to give their public support felt like they already did, you know, when we had that session last month. And the second issue that I wanted to comment on, it's in regards to the street illumination along Middlefield Road. I am thinking that at this point, I would be more inclined to suggest that we as council, along with the community, that we lobby directly to PG&E for a sooner intervention for the street illumination on Middlefield Road, because it seems to me like if our efforts go only to county, county may not have an effect to change PG&E's minds. Whereas if PG&E hears, you know, directly and repeatedly from our community, from community members and council members, I think that they may pay more attention and perhaps have a second look at their calendar. I don't know, that's what I'm feeling in that regard. As for the stop signs, I think that is something that a letter that probably still needs to be drafted as it was planned. Thank you.
In order to save the time and continue to keep this going, I think at this point, unless there's any other comments from the council.
Justin, perhaps this was a mistaken impression on my part, but I had understood that PG&E was first to put their wiring through the conduit. The other utilities would follow, but PG&E wouldn't energize their line until everybody else was in. Sounds like it's a mistaken impression that PG&E will actually fire up their line, and utilities, Verizon, Xfinity, whoever will go ahead and is that the case?
That is the time frame I gave you about a 30-week project, and that the streetlights would be energized around 26 weeks. That's what I got from the latest meeting in our public works and consumer folks. I don't know if that does it somewhere in there as scheduled for other utilities. That's not how I understood it. But we can confirm that, I can follow with DPW
Yeah,
and.
that's good. It's my impression was that PG&E would fire up their line until all the other utilities had been routed through the plant. It sounds like that's not good.
That's not my understanding, but I will have that understanding corrected next month.
Thanks so much.
Okay, did you have anything else to add?
Just a quick comment. I want to say when we first started the discussion, I was a little bit like Blair and very cynical that we'd have any impact, but after hearing from everybody, I'm actually for anybody who wants to write the letter to PG&E and the Board of Supervisors, both from this council, stating that it has an impact and that they have been delayed, and that we are requesting from the community to expedite the process as much as possible and parallelize many of the items as they can, as opposed to just waiting for one at a time. So whoever's taking lead on that, those would be my 2 points that I'd love to have in the letter, but otherwise I think it's supported.
I would be happy to take that on. If anyone else has any questions.
So then I'll move that Vice Chair Salman writes the letter to PG&E. And if anybody would like to help him, that's fine, with those 2 points, plus if anybody. That's the motion.
Okay, motion.
I'll second that.
Second.
And I got a request. Could you send it to the member of the assembly at the state senate as well as the board of supervisors and PG&E back and forth? Recipients.
Let me,
Strictly, we're limited to interpretations.
That's right. We're representing.
To make requests to different agencies and stuff. That's our audience.
I don't have a problem.
And I think this is one of those times when we can really support the Department of Public Works and the county by saying we are in complete agreement with management and the team, and so therefore I think this letter makes a lot of sense, so.
Yeah, commencing roll call votes. Vice Chair George Simon. Councilmember Juan Carlos Prada.
Yes.
Councilmember Niket Sarsi.
Yes.
Councilmember Eduardo Rodriguez.
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks Esser.
Yes.
Councilmember Blair Whitney.
Yes.
Councilmember Kelly Parisi.
Yes.
Councilmember Sherry Daly.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Moving on to agenda item number 4, welcome back to the city. Nice to see you again. Once again, to remind council members, we start with questions directly to them first.
Members of the council, Veterans Office, we're very happy to be here tonight. We are doing our final presentation.
Just have to speak into it.
So we're here doing our final presentation for the North Bear Oaks Community Plan Review Project. We've been here at regular intervals to provide information update and to get advice and feedback and direction from the council. So we're here again today with a final presentation. To introduce the team, again, this is the current team. Go to the next slide. We have Aaron Acton here again, principal of Big City Company. My name is Sabina Mora. I'm the project manager. We also have Noah Kornblum, economic development associate, and that's supporting the project right now. Next slide, please. Before I get into the agenda, I want to acknowledge county staff and other stakeholders that have participated and contributed significantly to this project. Obviously, the planning and building department, we've been meeting with them regularly on this project. Steve Monowitz, planning director, Bharat Singh, planning manager, and Bill Gibson have been our main point of contacts on this project. But we've also consulted with the Office of Community Affairs, the County Executive's Office, staff that work on equity and initiatives, as well as Supervisor Slocum's office. And we've also included in our final report an appendix that describes everyone that's contributed in some way to this project. And that really includes not-for-profits, schools, community leaders, a lot of county staff, partner agencies that provide services in North Fair Oaks, as well as this North Fair Oaks Community Council. So there's been a lot of different folks that have contributed to this, and they're fully acknowledged in our final report, but just wanted to mention that as well. And for the agenda today, since we've been here before to talk about this project, the outreach, we really want to focus mostly on talking about the deliverables that we've developed that are available to the community council stakeholders and county staff to essentially help move the initiatives in the community plan forward. And so we would like to focus on those deliverables and talk about the technical review and how it can be used. Go over an example of a policy and show how, if you're working on that policy, where to find materials and information about that policy and the status of that policy. And we'll look at the implementation dashboard, which gauges progress made on the community plan. And then we also want to talk about some administrative recommendations that we have for future plan implementation, as well as future focus areas. So it's a lot to cover, but it'll go really quickly, and we'll have some time for questions. Next slide. So San Mateo County requested a document that basically evaluates progress made on the North Fair Oaks Community Plan over time, and also makes recommendations of what focus areas will address the highest priorities of North Fair Oaks residents, and also includes an online dashboard to measure progress into the future. So at a very high level, this is a project that is an assessment of what's been done, what's ongoing, and what we should focus on in the future from the North Fair Oaks community. Next slide. We wanted to spend a little bit of time on how this can be used, because we're at the stage now where we're sharing this project with decision makers and stakeholders. We're here today, and this fall we'll go to the Board of Supervisors to share about this project and hopefully other stakeholders as well. And so this is a planning tool essentially for decision makers, county staff to basically use to make decisions that allocate resources and staffing and budgeting. Also for new staff or for training purposes, the assessment has what has already been completed, what are some of the challenges and roadblocks that have affected past implementation. And it also describes current community priorities. We did a lot of community outreach this past summer. And so it will help staff and decision makers understand current community priorities, line, short, medium, and long-term priorities with the community plan. So this is, we are hoping that this is used to kind of focus and start conversations about programs in the plan. There are approximately 450 policies in the North Fair Oaks Community Plan. And so essentially this is a focusing exercise where the county and stakeholders can try to better understand what to focus on in the near term. It's also a one-stop shop for information on activities in North Fair Oaks that's related to plan implementation. It's an appraisal of the status of programs currently in North Fair Oaks. It will help tweak strategies based on information that we collected from staff and stakeholders so that they can be more effective. It also provides a common agenda among stakeholders by helping stakeholders come together around certain initiatives by providing a shared base of understanding of what has happened in the past and current laws and other things that might affect a certain policy or program. It's also a communications tool that helps stakeholders and residents balance community goals with a realistic assessment. So this is what we wanted to achieve, this is what we were able to do, and this is what still needs to be done. So overall, we hope it will strengthen the ability of stakeholders to take action and support strategies in North Fair Oaks. And we also think it will help with reporting out to board members and leaders regularly on county progress and help making better, more informed decision making. Next slide. So what does this final report actually include? So the report goes through for chapters in the plan, a summary of accomplishments over the last 13 years, things that have been done. It also has a table for each chapter that has priority policies. Priority policies are what we want to focus on next, and these have been selected based on community and stakeholder input. Also sometimes on state law, things that we're required to do. In addition, things that we want to build momentum on that we thought we'd be good to focus on because there's been past because there's been momentum or it is an existing strength for the area. So we in this table we include why we think it should be a priority policy. Also, for all the policies, we've done an assessment as best as we can with the information we were able to find and the interviews that we did of whether the policy or the program is completed, initiated and partially completed, ongoing, or not initiated at all. And then finally, there's an appendix that has detailed descriptions of why we gave that status to those policies. So it'll explain how the policy was completed, if it was, or why it was not completed. So also want to highlight that this work is in draft form right now. Online, it's accessible at nfopn.com. You can, it is a work in progress, and because there are so many policies and things are constantly moving, you know, it will need to be updated regularly. And so we've proposed a process by which the county can regularly update this report or update the assessment every 1 to 2 to 3 years. And so that it can be used during annual budgeting and staffing. So an important thing will be to consider and understand the county's capacity to track, use, and incorporate this information into regular planning and operations. But we think that this will, you know, particularly involve county leaders understanding and using and being familiar with this, as well as regular data collection about North Fair Oaks. So we hope that with this baseline that we've created, that it will be continued to be used and referred to and updated. And so as decisions need to be made or opportunities arise, that relevant information is there for decision makers. Next slide. So today's feedback, there is a lot of information. We'll primarily wanted to share with you where the information can be found and what it is and illustrate how to use it. And then we wanted just to ask, you know, what are some ways that this assessment can be used to encourage implementation of initiatives from the North Fair Oaks Community Plan. And then if there's anything that we've missed in this assessment that should be incorporated, that needs to be. Next slide. I'll go through the outreach very quickly because we did a presentation back in September on the outreach. So just to mention that, you know, we conferred with this council, Office of Community Affairs, and the County Executive Office on how to do outreach in North Fair Oaks. So these are some of the principles that we used. Obviously, everything was bilingual. There was an emphasis on coming back and sharing what we found with stakeholders that provided their input and contributed. And then also just combining events, not creating new events, going to where people already are, and And yeah, so, next slide, please. We completed the outreach, primarily last summer. We did, almost 350 surveys. We interviewed approximately 40 community leaders. We did 12 pop-up events, in person in North Fair Oaks. Mailed out more than 5,000 postcards to every address in North Fair Oaks. We have a website, and we've had 680 website visitors. Online engagement e-blasts. We produced a couple of videos that explain the project and explain what a community plan is. And everything was bilingual. Next slide. How did we incorporate this input? So this input was included when we developed the priority policies. So it's guiding us when we think about which policies to focus on. And it'll help us, it has helped us when we make suggestions about how to move forward on a particular program or policy, how to be more successful in implementing that policy. And it will help the county develop recommendations for any changes to the plan's priorities. Next slide. So it's like I mentioned in September 2023, there is a report that talks about the survey results and all of the outreach. It's also Appendix A online in our report that summarizes the outreach, including respondents and priorities. Next slide. So for the technical review itself, we reviewed 6 chapters in the community plan. These are the topics of the 6 chapters. Next slide. We developed this criteria, as I mentioned before, based on stakeholder input, based on documents that we found and researched, and based on interviews, we made an assessment of whether something was completed, which is basically it has been carried through and has met all the requirements of the program. Initiated and partially complete policies that have started and some progress has been made, but they still require more effort. Ongoing policies that are expected to continue regularly and don't have an end point. They're just services or activities that are provided on an ongoing basis. And then not initiated, projects that haven't been started for whatever reason, they might be inactive because of lack of funding, or they're no longer applicable because of state law or other priorities have changed. And then we also have in the diamond symbol throughout the report, the priority policies, which is a recommendation on what are the policies that are prioritized by stakeholders, by the community, and either by state law, or we explain why we selected a priority policy in the report. A priority policy can overlap with any of the other 4 categories, but each policy has one designation as far as whether it's been completed or not initiated. Next slide. So we just wanted to provide a quick example from the economic development chapter. So this is not for us to necessarily delve into or read all the text on the slide, but it's just an example. So basically we have the economic development chapter. There's a goal that is support small businesses, small and maybe medium-sized businesses. And so there's a lot of policies under that goal. One policy is focused on revitalizing small businesses on commercial corridors, and it includes various services such as marketing, technical assistance, and funding to support tenant improvements. And it has a focus on retail and professional service firms, specifically located on major corridors in North Fair Oaks. So after looking at the information available, we gave this a status of initiated and partially complete. Next slide. And that's in the main report. You can go to the appendix. The economic development appendix has a table. This is again an example basically on the left-hand side, you'll see the policy itself. And then on the right-hand side is the example of why we decided that this was initiated and partially completed. And so we mentioned the small business grants that were provided to small businesses on Middlefield Road and other commercial corridors, the amounts for the grants, the reason that they were provided. And then the Middlefield Road Improvement Project, which is a commercial corridor revitalization initiative. And then lastly, the small business services that are available through the Economic and Employment Center that opened in 2023. And so with all these three initiatives, we felt that there was significant progress made for commercial corridor revitalization and support for small businesses. And so that's, but there is also more work that could be done. So that's what we gave in that status. Next slide. This happens to be a priority policy as well. And so this is an example of the priority policy table, which the first two columns are the policy itself and the status I already mentioned. And then we also include a recommendation of what we feel it should be the focus, and then the reason why it should be prioritized. And so this is available in the final report, which is online, and it's also there's various levels of detail depending on what was available and how much work has been done in this particular area. But we did cover almost every place. Next slide. So this is the online dashboard, which is again at nfoplan.com. So it is a visualization of progress made on the North York City plan based on this rubric or criteria that we developed. So for example, the number in the middle is just the total number of policies in each of the chapters. There's 22 policies in the land use chapter. And online, if you hover over the colors, it'll just tell you how many policies were completed, how many policies are initiated and partially completed, ongoing or not initiated. Next slide. So you can also filter online by chapter. So if you wanted to look at the economic development chapter, you can filter and just the what's been completed, for example, in economic development, or you can also filter by say one of the stats is not initiated. If you want to look at only a list of policies that haven't been initiated. So you can filter either by chapter or by completion status. So this is basically a tool, a visual representation of overall progress made towards implementing the plan, and also can be updated or will be updated over time to show progress. Next slide. So updating this on a regular basis is what's going to make it a very useful tool for monitoring the progress on the plan's objectives and facilitating decision making. Next slide. Wanted to cover a little bit of the accomplishments of what we found was completed over the last 13 years since the plan was adopted. There is so much, so we really want to keep it very, very high level, and I'm just going to mention one bullet from each of the chapters, just to highlight some key achievements. And I'd like to say that every bullet that we are summarizing here at a very high level is associated often with multiple plan policies. So the detail of which is included in the report, but for example, there were multiple policies related to the comprehensive rezoning program that was completed in 2023. We just wanted to highlight this very high level item, but this is associated with probably 5 or 6 different policies in the plan. Next slide. Again, for land use, reduced parking requirements in priority development areas. Next slide. key achievements in parking and circulation, obviously, we talked a lot about the comprehensive reconfiguration of Middlefield Road, substantially completed. This was in the plan originally. Next slide. Parking and circulation, the county has 2 surface parking lots that it developed and maintains currently in the North Fair Oaks, which were in the plan and weren't there here 2 years ago. Next slide. Infrastructure strengthened requirements for new developments to reduce water usage and manage stormwater. Next slide. The San Mateo County Office of Sustainability opened in 2014. And so that office tracks green infrastructure across San Mateo County unincorporated area, including North Fair Oaks, and investigates regional flood vulnerability. And again, I'm only covering the first bullet in the interest of time, but these are in the PowerPoint slide deck and also in the report itself. Next slide. Under health and wellness, the development or improvement of the 3 parks or green spaces are all, along the Hetch Hetchy right of way. So the improvement of Friendship Park, the Fair Oaks Beautification Association, green space, and the playground were all developed or improved since the plan's adoption. Next slide. The establishment of the Department of Emergency Services and development of emergency preparedness and evacuation plans. That was also housing through the housing element process, identification of sites for affordable housing and removal of constraints to housing development. There's a huge work program associated with the housing element. And a lot of those policies were also aligned with policies in the North Coast Community Plan. Next slide. Funding for nonprofit service providers for foreclosure prevention, homeowner education, renter protections, tenant assistance, and homeless services. So the detail in our report will say, how much funding was provided to which organizations, and things like that. Again, this bullet covers several policies in the plan. So we wanted just to summarize it here, but you can see how much, for example, was provided for homeless services under that policy. Next slide. Economic development, the North Fair Oaks Economic and Employment Center with services provided by Renaissance and Job Train. Next slide. And like we mentioned before in our example, provision of small business grants and support for commercial corridor revitalization. The small business grants were provided as a response to COVID-19 and also to the impacts of the Middlefield Road Improvement Project, but we felt that the grants are still, the reasons or the impetus for providing them, it's still getting to the goal of that particular program or policy, and that these businesses were supported with grant funds, and so we included that here. Next slide. So that we wanted to just provide just a snapshot of some of the accomplishments over the last 13 years that we identified. But we also have some administrative recommendations as well. And so we wanted to highlight one. So the main administrative recommendation we wanted to highlight was the establishment of an interdepartmental team to track and manage implementation of the North Fair Oaks Community Plan. So we felt that this team could help guide and push forward all of our other administrative recommendations that are listed there. So for example, the regular evaluation of programs that are in North Fair Oaks, that are being delivered in North Fair Oaks, and the coordination and update of this information that we've provided kind of a baseline for. Another item is targeting resources to North Fair Oaks. The county provides a lot of resources to the county as a whole. And so having a little bit better tracking of which resources or targeting resources specifically to North Fair Oaks and then tracking the utilization of those resources in North Fair Oaks specifically. So we feel this interdepartmental team could really effectively do that. And so then this team helps track implementation of activities and has the data and information on hand and is able to respond quickly and inform decision making related to programs in North Fair Oaks. Next slide. So one of the things the county had asked for in this report is areas to focus on from the plan because the plan has so many policies. And so this is a table, each of these is a table in the final report, and we're referencing the table page number at the top here. So on page 11 of the report, we have the land use priority policies. And so I'm gonna highlight one priority and just the table. When you go to the table, it actually has a specific policy of that's in the plan that is associated with this. So for example, this bullet, community-oriented facilities such as pocket parks, community gardens, plazas, and neighborhood gathering spaces. This is a very big priority for the community in North Fair Oaks. And it's associated with multiple policies in the plan. And those policies are included in page 11 of the final report. So this is just a very high level summary of those. Okay, next slide. In the parking and circulation chapter, parking management, huge priority, and also multiple state laws coming down, especially recently related to shared parking, unbundled parking, TDM. Some of these which were in the community plan as potential policies for the long term, and now we might need to do them due to state law. And so again, this is an example of, some of the priority policies are in here because the community might have prioritized them or stakeholders might have prioritized them. And in some cases, they're prioritized because changes in state law will be requiring them. And so they're also prioritized for that reason. Next slide. Infrastructure, regional flooding, and there's a lot of collaboration, both with One Shoreline and adjacent jurisdictions and the county that needs to be focused on to develop solutions to regional flooding. And these policies are not, we haven't recommended any new policies. All of these policies that I'm talking about for areas of future focus are all existing policies in the plan. We're just saying these are the ones that we should prioritize and focus on, but there isn't any new policy making this. We're just organizing and prioritizing what the areas of focus should be. And this was a big one as well. Next slide. Health and wellness, expanding safe, accessible routes for non-vehicular travel. The county has made a lot of progress on this, but there's a lot more to do as well, and it is a big priority. Next slide. Housing, promoting measures to ensure that new affordable units are rented by existing North Fair Oaks residents. Huge priority. Next slide. Economic development, providing technical assistance to support the retention of existing businesses and encourage employers to hire local. Slide. So today, going back again to the first couple of slides, this really is a tool to be used by decision makers and stakeholders for planning, for long-term planning, for budgeting, for annual budgeting. It's a tool that provides information to new staff, or to better understand what are the roadblocks, why have certain things not been done. And then again, a focusing exercise. There are so many initiatives, so many planned policies. What should we focus on in the near term? And so for today's feedback, we're really interested in hearing more about how the work that we've done up to this point and now be shared and how it can best be used to be as useful as possible to help implementation of the community plan in the next 3, 5, 10 years. And then if there's things that we missed in this assessment that should also be incorporated. So I think the next slide might be staff contacts. So really want to thank San Mateo County Planning Director Steve Monowitz, Rob Singh, and Will Gibson. We've been working with them for the last year and a half on this. And so we just open it up for any questions or discussion or feedback. Thank you. Are there any questions from council members? Go ahead.
I just want to say I'm really impressed. It's a great job of organizing a very lengthy and complex document. I'm kind of policy wonk, and sometimes I go to the public library and they actually have bound copies, and I'm curious like what's going on with downtown Menlo Park and at the Menlo Park Library. And I could pull out this bound document and page through it and understand, oh, they're doing like an arts and entertainment thing, or they're doing, okay, now I understand it better. Are there plans to like kind of archive or make publicly available, like at the branch library here, a bound copy or something? Because I'm familiar with that. Most public libraries are kind of depositories for the adjacent jurisdiction. And there's not a lot of people that actually read it. But for the people that are interested, it's cool that it's there. So that's a question, is could we maybe have the long printed version available for public access, not having to go down to the county building, but maybe the local branch library.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And a big part of this moving forward is sharing this information with stakeholders and residents and governing bodies so that it is as much as possible. Not everyone's going to be interested, but it is a big part of that. So found printed copies at libraries, I think, is a great idea. And just sharing this, this is a communications tool that allowed us the opportunity to talk to nonprofits in North Fair Oaks and other community members about the plan, which was, not the opportunity wasn't available to us over the last 13 years necessarily. It wasn't like front and center, what's going on with the North Fair Oaks community plan. So it was an opportunity to kind of bring the plan back to light and talk about it and share about its existence and that it's there and that there was a big effort, 3 years of at least of outreach and work that went into it. And so to kind of pull it off the shelf and dust it off and share what it included with community members. So that was a great part of this, and I think that should continue to the fall. We'll be doing several presentations on this over the course of the fall. We'll look at doing some printed copies.
I'm thinking about different generations and learning styles. I'm not sure if it's possible to pay some interns to do a video in Spanish and English that this is where North Oaks was 20 years ago, this is where we are today, this is where we want to be in 20 years, to help visualize. And, you know, you can drop in some little vignette interviews and, you know, eye in the sky view and show building popping up. And in my mind, I can picture it, but I mean, I'm trying to describe like new media design. But people really enjoy that kind of stuff versus digging through a lengthy bound document, and that might be a way to communicate and to get community buy-in or consensus behind our existing plan. That, you know, it's just another communications tool, but you know, the people learn watching YouTube videos or things like that. That would be awesome if it's possible. Maybe what you're made to do, but yeah.
I will say that on our website, we did 2 videos at the very beginning. It was really a lot of fun for us to show those at meetings and 2 different people. Like at the Sequoia Adult School, we went to classrooms and showed these videos. And it was one of them is what is a community plan? And so it's a very general video that could be used really for any community plan. But it just would have the basics of what it does. And then we have another one that talks about what is the North Heroes community plan. So you guys have seen, I think we've shown you. Kelly?
Thank you for this great presentation. Thank you, Claire. I agree, no one's gonna bring paper bound. Why don't we just ask local schools? They all have video yearbook departments who do content to talk about this in ways that no one at this table can actually understand how young people speak. That is like another. But I think that would be a really fun way, and you guys all have really cute Jennifer, this darling intern back here who just joined on staff. Like, there are better people to do this in the county and in our community than myself.
Ever ask comment? Ever go ahead?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you for your comprehensive work. There's a lot of detail in that. And so going back to your slide on today's feedback, so the first one would be related to the second question. Are there things that we have missed in this assessment that should be incorporated? I think there's a lot of information here that is impossible for us to see through this presentation. And I second Councilmember Whitney a suggestion about making some copies available for the public. And in the past, when there was the first iteration of this community plan, each council member got a printed copy. And I think so this leads to the second question on your slide. How can this assessment be used to encourage implementation of the North Oaks Community Plan? So I think the council members in this group are especially are special people who should be very invested in looking in detail at this report and what has been done, what needs to be done, and what is missing. Because I think that if we each individually identify all of those, then we can work together to perhaps select some of the most relevant issues in that community plan and work towards realizing, any of those issues that seem to be most relevant to our community. So I will be taking a detailed look. And then from there, I think it would be easier to see what are the things that we can do with our community and also as a part of the council. Thank you.
I did just superficially pick up something that I thought may have been missed in this plan. I saw that you proposed multiple jurisdictions work together on stormwater stuff. And I'm a bicycle rider, not every, it's not my only mode of transportation, but I enjoy it. And there's a disconnect between jurisdictions and there's a need for more cooperation. Like, I would love to see a bike corridor going along the train tracks like you have in multiple cities in Santa Clara County. And then you lose that, you cross the street to like Alma Street, kind of ends, and then you're leaving either El Camino or Middlefield. And then Atherton, you're just, it's frustrating. Where there's like a beautiful infrastructure and it's good for the stops in this jurisdiction, and then people just have to find their way around certain streets and then go back to the beautiful infrastructure. So it's a high priority that, you know, clusters of cities that are immediately adjacent or jurisdictions do a better job of working together. That's a high priority, and I think I call them out. Atherton and Midland Park and North Fair Oaks kind of need to be on the same page, and it has to be in a not just self-serving manner for complying with what our residents want, but we're looking at a region for everyone passing through, commuters, everyone.
Council members? For me personally too, I want to take a look at it. I'd like to. It's a good comment at this time. I'm doing this one and dive into. Project. Great order. I think we all just need. Yeah, there's a lot there.
Go through it now, it's a lot. She's by chance have this in the spreadsheet. Makes sense, true, just like.
It's you can read this online. I think it's a table, I think it's a PDF, but it's a table. And you can search the PDF for terms, you know, I think a good example, what Councilmember Whitting just mentioned is, you know, it'll tell you who the partners and stakeholders are for a particular issue. Like if you're interested in seeing what might be going on with the, you know, a potential shared use path along the train, along the Dumbarton corridor train track. It'll tell you, you know, Samtrans has an initiative, a recent initiative where they're studying this. You know, it'll go a little bit of the history of what has happened in the past associated with that, you know, things that haven't worked, and for the various reasons. And it's still high level, but it'll kind of touch on the 5 or 6 different things in the last, you know, decade that have affected that issue. And so it kind of puts somebody in a good position to just have like a little overview of that issue and who the main stakeholders are and what's been going on with it. So that is, I do recommend, you know, just kind of taking a look at, you know, whatever area or chapter is of interest and just kind of doing sort of a find, you know, for keywords and that. That'll and then the dashboard itself is you can filter and search through that, but that only includes the policies and their status. So that is kind of neat to go through. But most of the information will be under the plan assessment web page. And then within that, the appendices for each topic.
And picking up on Kathleen's thought, I was wondering if it would be possible for staff to print out copies of this, have them sent to our own, so we can kind of review review them, mark them up, things like that. You know, ask this would be a great time for a study session. We've all have gone through it. We establish our priorities, not in a study session this year. We're gonna see annual planning next year. I want to do extend my appreciation for supervisors funding your work. It's not inexpensive and be incredibly valuable with the council. And I was wondering when you're actually going to present the final portion of the report to the board that date's been set in.
I don't believe we have a date. I think we have, plans to do that outreach this fall. But it's a good date.
Thank you.
Once again, thank you guys again. For the plan, if it's okay, we'll all agree that we'll take a deeper dive, look at it. You guys.
I'll have one.
Good evening, everyone. Aaron Atkin, principal with the city company. First, I'd like to thank the entire community council for giving us such great feedback, especially during the community outreach phase and helping us just connect with the community that way. In terms of providing us comments, this will go to the planning commission next and then on to the board. I think we could get you printed copies. If you have certain things, you could also email staff, and those could be communicated to us. And those could be taken into consideration as we take the next step throughout the process. And I agree as you're doing your annual planning and going through that exercise, this would make a great tool to do that because it has all of that there, looking at what's been done, what still needs to be done, what's ongoing. Ultimately, if I've worked as city staff in a number of agencies, and budgeting is always the most difficult thing, right? There's a ton of things that are on your plate, and to be able to sit down and make recommendations, seeing what's all on your plate, it's a good prioritization tool. So I recommend you doing that way. But thank you all again.
We also have an email address for this project, which is nfo@smcweb.org, which is on the website as well. So yeah, feel free to, you can email us as Good City staff, or you can also email nfo@smcweb.org. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, any public comment?
Members of the public, if you wish to comment on agenda item number 4, please use the raise hand feature on Zoom or bring a speaker slip up to the clerk during this time. You'll be granted 2 minutes to speak at this time. There are no more comments. Thank you.
Yeah. So, get a letter written, letter is support to district board supervisor Slocum, recommending additional stop signs on behalf of the North Roads Council. This is an item that we brought forward for fund now. Unfortunately, I realized that we haven't reached consensus in order to get a draft of the letter to Patrick Slocum, so I thought it was important that we get that idea going. Draft, we have some draft language, and if we can all agree, then yeah, stop sign. We had Claire had helped me with the draft, and we looked at Second Avenue and Fourth Avenue. We talked about Third Avenue, like Douglas. My big priority is, I've got one, but I think we need to ask you guys any questions or have a comment, and then decide what that should look like. Go ahead.
We're gonna get public comment first, or are we gonna have discussion first?
I think what council shared earlier is a good question to council first, then public comment, then second.
Any questions? Lydia? No. Members of the public? comments from council. Go ahead.
I support whatever said that, was it last month, we didn't have forum, but we had like 10 people talk about the urgent need in their eyes for stop signs, that whatever we shared at that meeting, we entered as public comment on the side. And then as far as discussion, my own personal feelings, I heard Director of Public Works state that they like to see things settle before they start making micro changes, and I'm sympathetic with that. But I also realize that it's better to do something than do nothing. Maybe not 3 stop signs. I was really frustrated when we had a stop sign every block during construction. And I think a lot of other people just avoided the area because of that. And if you go down El Camino, the city of Menlo Park puts so many stoplights, it's the main slow part. They slow down and they don't really care about impact to other parts of the community. I don't want to do the same thing with beautiful corridor that pushes people away and start putting way too many stop signs. So I'm in favor of like one of the highest priorities, one on Second Street in the county parking lot. But not to immediately say 3 stop signs and other stuff. I do agree that we should let the things settle and see what the traffic patterns are before we second guess public work.
I'd just like to echo Councilman Blair's statement that I think the sudden opening up of Middlefield created like a whole new flow, and there's a lot of uncertainty. One stop sign, I mean, I'm not even sure one stop sign would be necessary depending on what it is, and I'm also worried about unintentional impacts of putting in that stop sign, creating more issues on side roads, or people trying to get around it, or getting frustrated with the drive in general. Anything to calm people down at this point and let it settle would be something I'd be more in favor of. I think that, you know, in the draft letter, we say that pedestrians aren't using the crosswalks. I think that's also a problem. I do think that pedestrians need to take some responsibility for using the proper crosswalks in the proper manner, that they then do that so that the drivers also get used to it. There's like a whole ecosystem that needs to settle in as people get used to the new way of doing things. And so on that, I just want to make sure we're not rushing, and I'll disagree that doing something is better than doing nothing when we don't have adequate knowledge or information to make a decision, or to, for doing something may cause something worse to happen. So I like to be very careful in trying to rush to judgment based on what's the immediate happening right now. And I'd love to, like, again, I definitely don't want an accident to happen. I don't want something bad to happen, but I also don't want us to create more problems and more issues throughout the whole system. And then everybody gets frustrated with the new thing, and people, you know, either start running stop signs, they don't pay attention, or other things are happening and getting frustrated with that as well. So road rage, things like that. That would just be my concern with us trying to put a letter. I know we've had a few months of this and there's been a lot of public comment. And I'd love to definitely, again, sympathetic to them, and I want to address it, but I think we should keep an eye out and put the pressure on Public Works to keep us apprised of what they're seeing, what the data is showing, and how people are changing, especially with different traffic patterns throughout the year.
Yeah. Any other?
If we are gonna write this letter. Right now, it's written second down, if it was second. My thought is, probably should be closer to us, this is all it is. But also, also covers. My thought is if we are going to write this letter and insist on a stop sign. Instead of it being at Middlefield Second, as we have this letter, my thought is it should be at Middlefield, just because it's closer to Mississippi, all the kids are also covers the brush parking lot.
I just want to add that, I do see people using the crosswalks as well as not using the crosswalks. There's a lot of increased pedestrian activity, which I'm excited to see. And some people use the crosswalks, and some drivers yield to it, and some don't. We get to the halfway point, and I think we're supposed to wait a little bit longer, but it's awkward. As far as like driver education and pedestrian education. But there's a lot of new pieces, it's like we put a traffic circle down somewhere, and people are used to driving one way, and all of a sudden they have to change how they drive on autopilot, and I'm thinking. As well as there's a lot of, foot-borne traffic that are out there on the sidewalks and crossing the street to get to the credit union or get back and forth. And there's a lot of moving pieces. And I also see people just like stop in the center turn lane, do the classic parking job, I'll just put the blinkers on and leave my car there, which is kind of rude, but it's totally prevalent in my neighborhood. That's like acceptable double parking, and there's a lot of pieces here. I just want to see that we do it right.
So I'm going to comment that we heard from a number of residents who actually cross Middlefield at Second and Fourth. I would challenge all of the council members to say, and tell me how many times they have tried to cross Middlefield Road at Second and Fourth as a pedestrian, as a driver, in the last 6 months. Are you driving that on a regular basis? Because the people that we heard from are people that are using Middlefield Road to cross back and forth. I personally have crossed Middlefield Road twice in the last 2 months, both times at Second Avenue. One of the drivers went right through the stop sign on one side. And that's an N of 2, correct? Yep, that's fair. But we heard from people that live in the community. We heard from people that are there on a regular basis, and those are the people that I think we would report to. There is no stop sign between Fifth and Douglas. That is a long stretch of road. These are families crossing, those are shoppers crossing. I think we would be ignoring their needs in order to say, well, we don't know what's going on yet. So I think a very strong letter saying at the very least, at Casa de Circulo, which is kitty corner to the community center, the economic center, where people would be going back and forth, is a fair ask. It's an ask. And so if you want to challenge me that you see something different, I'm all for it, but are you crossing as a pedestrian at either of those two crosswalks? Do you feel that those lights are flashing in a way? If you go to Florence and across from Marsh Manor, that is a bright light. You have to see those pedestrians crossing. You will stop. The noise is loud. It's not the same on Middlefield Road. And I would challenge you guys, we can table this and we can do this, but I would challenge you to cross it at least 4 or 5 times before the next council meeting and tell me how safe it feels.
Just to add to what you were saying, I can agree with a lot of what you said. It is not a safe thing. It is not a safe intersection. I lived there, crossed it numerous times, both with my vehicle and walking. Something has to be done. Driving has to be leveled out somehow with flat traffic flow, construction staff, or with the stop signs.
I hesitated on speaking because I was speaking on behalf of myself. But I did actually try to cross that intersection this past weekend, and it was dangerous. And it was also at 9 a.m. in the morning, and I hit the thing and no one stopped. And I basically waited until it felt safe and just ran. So my own anecdotal experience from literally Sunday at the amazing car show, which I it did not feel safe, and I live at 8th and Middlefield, and there's 4-way crossway, and that also feels a little dicey, and that has streetlights and all of the things. And so I support you, Kathleen, and I'm happy to help you work on a strong.
Through the chair. Okay.
Yes, go ahead. Edward, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. Yes, I think we need to first acknowledge that we continue to live in a car culture and really not doing anything supports that idea that we live in a car culture where even common sense sometimes makes us think that, oh my God, how can we slow down traffic? That's that's nearly a crime or something like that. But I think that we need to realize that in this community, per capita, there are more pedestrians than anywhere else in other communities. And I think that's the reality that we need to work with and make or change our car culture and make it a pedestrian culture or a more friendly pedestrian culture. There were also a few comments, if you want to advocate for motorists or the car culture, that some cars or some neighbors driving their cars were having a hard time merging onto Middlefield Road because the traffic never stops. When there's a string of cars, it keeps on going, especially during rush hour. And to merge, whether you are on Second or any other street, can be difficult because you have to, try to catch both sides, etc. But anyway, I think that, the reality is that we have more pedestrians than other cities do. And I think, the public comment that it was given last month supporting stop signs along Middlefield Road attests to what the community is yearning for. Now, one last point that I wanted to make is, or rather a question, what is the specific plan that county will follow to measure safety and use in the next six months or so in order to determine whether we need a stop sign or not on Middlefield Road? Because if there is not a specific plan that can demonstrate somehow that in reality, adding a stop sign would be detrimental to our community in any way, shape, or form, then obviously we would have something in hand to discuss. But if we are just going to be waiting 6 months for the sake of it, God forbids, fatal accidents, then, I don't see the point in waiting for implementation of at least one stop sign, but ideally maybe 2. Thank you.
Happy to speak to that issue.
Yes, please.
On the data and monitoring, I believe this was an issue that came up at the last meeting as well. As I think the Middlefield project added a number of pedestrian safety elements that did not exist in the 4-lane road before, where I don't believe there were any stop signs either. One of them is the bulb outs, so it's a shorter crossing than it used to be, and another one was the lights, as mentioned. And as you know, the design, a lot went into design and the traffic engineering, all of that. In terms of the weight, I think the one thing that was the primary thing that is not yet activated, both streetlights we talked earlier, but the traffic signal, at Pacific and, Middlefield, once that gets activated, it could impact the amount of speed people take, could impact, the traffic flows, could have other impacts. So that's one of the things that Public Works wanted to monitor and wait till that happened until to really know what the impacts were. In terms of the specific question, that Councilmember Rodriguez just asked with respect to what are the data that we looked to determine whether or not a stop sign is warranted. There is a process for us. There is a Public Works process to request a stop sign. The data they would look to, and this is from the California Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, it's number of vehicles in the intersection or traffic volumes, accident history, vehicular and pedestrian conflicts, visibility issues, high concentrations of pedestrians or vehicles, regular use of the intersection by children, elderly, or disabled, need to control left turn conflicts, and other unusual criteria that might come up at a particular setting. So those would be the types of data and the types of issues that would be looked at if Public Works were asked to study the issue of whether or not it would be appropriate to have a stop sign. Stop signs sometimes are very effective, sometimes they aren't. I feel like we've also heard public comments about a stop sign on Middlefield right now that isn't being followed and the danger that it creates for them. So there are sort of some criteria used to evaluate the effectiveness of any kind of traffic control device. And this list I just read to you is from what Public Works, what they would use to ask to study this intersection.
So I just want to address that I also have crossed in that area, and I also crossed at 7th and Middlefield. And I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that is one of the safest intersections. I will say I do feel safer with the new layout. And that also being said, it sounds more like we have a lot of bad drivers in the area and weren't following regulations. So a couple things that I would look at, and before I get to that, as a bicyclist, stop signs can also be more dangerous because cars will be maybe looking for pedestrian walkers, but they tend not to see bicyclists. So there can be an issue in that space as well. I do remember at El Camino and I'm trying to remember in Atherton, the police or sheriff would basically end up crossing El Camino when they press the buttons and see drivers who stop and issue tickets and stuff. So possibly in order to address the issue today where we're having, is it possible to maybe ask the sheriff's office to take a look and maybe do some traffic enforcement? Because drivers are supposed to stop when they see the flashing signals. And so if they have somebody out there taking a look at it, watching the drivers, issuing citations, can that help us right now while we continue a traffic study, possibly create a safer space in that corridor?
I believe the only thing to do would be ask for the study to start sooner, but I think they're saying that they don't want to. So.
I think what you could ask the board to direct Public Works to study the issue, study the safety issues. I think one of the considerations in that study would be we're probably not at equilibrium. So the data collected over the next however many months until that traffic light in particular is activated on Pacific is not necessarily going to be the equilibrium going forward after that. I think that would be one of the issues that Public Works would have to consider how to treat the data over the next few months, given that we're not yet at that equilibrium.
At this point, it's starting to get late, so I don't know.
Just thinking of timelines, if we kind of wait until the data's in for the lights to be on, the traffic lights to be on, and then assess road conditions at that point. If my math is right, we're probably close to a year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, I wish the Public Works would give me an idea, give you a more definite estimate, but yes, I think you have to wait till the traffic, or not have to wait, but the data, equilibrium probably won't be reached until the traffic light is on, and then people get used to what that is, and then you see what it looks like. I will tell you, there are other things we look at, I think, with we have gotten some comment about the visibility of the crossing lights, and so Public Works is looking at that right now to see if there's something about the signs at some of these intersections that is not as visible. So that's one thing that's happening now, that could also potentially impact, you know, where things settle. I keep on referring to it as equilibrium, but I think you all know what I mean. When things kind of settle out, it becomes a normal pattern.
I have no problem with supporting directing vice chair to board the chair and the vice chair to draft and send to the supervisor. Letter that we have a strong interest in the community and amongst ourselves in assuring safety. And if they could expedite any sort of studies, we would appreciate it.
Motion?
Or was that a motion?
Is that a motion?
If you need a motion, yeah, that's a motion.
I'll second that one.
Favor?
To take roll call vote because everybody's online.
I support it as well.
Unanimous consent.
Commencing roll call votes. Vice Chair George Shannon. Councilmember Juan Carlos Sparta.
Yes.
Councilmember Eduardo Rodriguez.
Yes,
Councilmember Nick Anserson.
Quick clarification, the letter that you'll be drafting is for the supervisors to expedite any study and to try and see what can be done, is that correct?
I believe it will go directly to supervisor.
Yeah, so the content of the letter, I just want to make sure it's for supporting the expediting of the study and evaluating the intersections for.
Yes.
And I'll support that, yes.
Councilmember Brooks Esser. Councilmember Blair Whitney.
Yeah.
Councilmember Kelly Parisi. Chair Kathleen Daly.
No.
Motion passes. 6-2. The Councilmember 6 yes, 0 2.
Write a letter.
I'm sorry, through the chair, I wasn't able to hear quite well, so the motion was to draft the letter or to expedite the study.
Draft a letter requesting expediting a study.
And maybe I can ask a follow-up question, is expediting the study, will that shorten the time where our community will learn the safety and use of Middlefield Road with or without stop signs?
And I think I know the answer.
The request would be to the board to direct Public Works to expedite and study the intersection and, you know, supporting of the direction of the board, but we will work with the direction of the board gives based on you.
Seeking a letter. Oh, it's. An informational update regarding the request for certification of public convenience and necessity related to the Loop Neighborhood Market, El Camino Real, and Atherton, their application for an alcoholic beverage license. So that's going to be led by County Attorney. Thank you.
Good evening. Yes, I'll be happy to present when you're ready.
We're ready for you.
Great. This is just an informational update, so it doesn't need to be put to a vote tonight. As you know, we brought this item to you a few months ago of Loop Market requesting a determination that the issuance of something called a Type 21 ABC license would serve the public convenience and necessity. It's called a PCN determination. After the NFOCC held its meeting and its discussion, but before the Board of Supervisors could take action on the request, the applicant withdrew the application for a Type 21 license and has instead submitted a new application for a Type 20 license. Now, a Type 21 license authorizes the sale of beer, wine, and distilled spirits for consumption off premises, but a Type 20 license being sought by the applicant now authorizes only the sale of beer and wine for consumption off the premises, not distilled spirits. So the intention is to bring the PCN request to the Board of Supervisors for the Type 20 license in the coming month. Right now, it's tentatively on calendar for the board on September 10th, but we wanted the council to know that the application had changed in this way, and that if you had thoughts, you should advise the supervisor about those thoughts. There's no need for the council to take any further action, but we thought it was a development that was significant enough that it required updating the council about the status.
Would the letter help or would the individual?
Given that the council was unable to obtain a majority in favor of taking any particular action at the meeting about the Type 21 license, I don't think we're recommending that you try to come to a consensus about that. If you want to write a letter in your individual capacity to your supervisor, you are entirely free to do so.
Any other questions?
Uh,
Sure, Claire, go ahead.
The Chevron station by Target, that's in the Redwood City jurisdiction, they sell beer, wine. It's not our issue, but I've been paying attention since this came up on our agenda. Just something to be aware of. Just when you get gas, if you walk into the convenience store, just look to see what they're selling.
Are there further questions, comments on that? We'll move on now.
Members of the public, if you wish to comment on agenda item number 6, please use the raise hand feature on Zoom or bring a speaker select to the clerk during this time. You'll be granted 2 minutes to speak at this time when this call. We have 2 comments on Zoom. I'll require your name, unmute yourself. I have to call Gabriela Valencia. Or once the timer is up.
Hello, on this issue, I would like to share my concern that in North Fair Oaks as a whole, I believe in the past, at least when I was aware of the data, there were so many more liquor licenses per capita in comparison to other communities. So I just encourage the council to please consider that anytime you are supporting any new liquor licenses to be issued in North Fair Oaks, because as it is, it looks to me like we already have way too many liquor licenses in the area, and it would be good whenever something new is being considered to bring back the most current data and look at it in context of why are we supporting a new one or why are we against a new one. I think it's always good to look at things in context, and it would be great when something like this is being brought up to share that information with the public so that we can also learn about what the status is of the number of liquor licenses in North Fair Oaks. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Owens.
Hi, good evening. I'm Steve Rawlings. You may recall I came to this body a couple of months ago, and I gave a presentation. We had quite a bit of discussion about this. After our meeting, I did have an opportunity to talk to Supervisor Slocum personally. We talked a little bit about some of the same issues there. And then I also talked to County Council John Neblett. And at the end of the day, I think that we decided that it would be it's going to be a less intensive use if we just sold the beer and wine. And talking to the supervisor, I think there was a little bit of trepidation on the availability of spirits. And my client made the decision that, hey, we'll only sell beer and wine. We don't need to be in that business. We're looking the product line that we would like to offer. And the supervisor seemed to be very appreciative of the fact that that would be the product lines we would only sell. And nothing else has changed with the proposal. Again, the play area that we would be dedicating toward alcohol and beverage, around 4% of the overall floor space. And as I mentioned before, this is a fairly large operator of gas stations and convenience stores, and they have over 50 other locations that serve, that sell alcohol, and they have an excellent track record of being very responsible at selling this product line. So anyway, with that, thank you again for the opportunity to speak.
Last call for public comment.
Okay, for the sake of time, we are running a little over, so I'm gonna quickly ask for any report outs. If it's something not particularly urgent, maybe we can save it, just to let staff and everyone get home. Go ahead, start.
Good evening, everyone. Actually, I have a lot to report out, but I'm just gonna prioritize one. So I just want to let you guys know the district is aware of the Calwater building project. Calwater purchased a property on 503 Fifth Ave, North Oaks, and they're planning to create that into a drilling site. Joshua from our office did go with Calwater to visit a couple sites in Los Altos and even Mountain View. And the following is what he found. So all sites are securely barricaded with different types of fencing. The landscapes at each side is maintained monthly to ensure connecting with the neighborhood. The sites are well distanced from the adjacent homes. Noise is minimal as the pumps are enclosed in structures to dampen sound. Safety measures including double contaminated treatment tanks and with alarm systems to alert staff in case of leaks. No complaints have been reported by residents of these neighborhoods. And additionally, we also talked to Calwater to see how they can engage with the community as this project comes forward. So it's really all of our report out. Also, our district office is officially open in NFO, so we'd love for you guys to help us get the word out that we are there, and we want to listen. We want to hear from the community. But I'll help. That's all. Oh, the last thing, actually, sorry, guys. Supervisor wanted me to extend an invitation for you guys to tour our new county building. So if you're interested in that, please reach out to me. I'll reach out to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Glenn.
We had our first car show. Did our very first car show Sunday. Well, it was a huge success. Massive turnout. We actually had to shut down registration for cars a week early because it was just so much fun. So we'll pretty much that's all.
I'll keep my comments brief regarding that. I want to give a shout out to Josh, working really hard on that, worked really hard. Kathleen, worked very hard. Nothing but great comments from the community. I'll be very brief on this. The community said that we should do the car show in conjunction with Middlefield Festival and close down a few blocks of Middlefield Road like it used to be back when Middlefield Festival was a very, very big thing. So that's something to think about. And also some of the participants in the car show said that they wouldn't mind paying some fees to participate in the car show, particularly if those fees would go to a North Oaks community nonprofit like Casa Circulo, because the car show was in there next to their building. So again, there's so much potential. Nothing but great things to say about it from the community.
One more thing. just to reiterate what you said, Josh was massively instrumental in all this. He kicked ass, man, worked day and night with me. Can't make no objection.
I just want to build on what Carlos and George said. Josh, you killed it. Also Connie, thank you for showing up. You also translated the numbers and we learned a lot. Like, make sure the DJ brings a mic. And we'll work on that raffle next time, but everyone here, shout out to Kathleen and George, who worked so hard on this, and George was sweating it out, making sure everybody had the right spot. So kudos to all. This was such a beautiful event. And that's it.
Yeah, one quick comment, I just want to say that there's been a lot of activity around trees and the permitting, so the county office has been very responsive and really appreciate how they've been reaching out and following up, so overall, that's been very good for us. I do know that we received a lot of written comment about trees on Middlefield, so perhaps in one of the upcoming meetings, we can have an agenda item on that to look into that and discuss a little bit more, since that seems to be another big issue. Again, thank you for the responses. Yeah, 3 quick items. I did the disaster preparation fair, got the last hour of it, and hooked up with the Stewart folks. And I asked for an agenda item at a future meeting to hear from the Menlo Park CERT team about where we can put a trailer. Didn't make it on this agenda, but worth talking about because an earthquake and all this other stuff's inevitable. And I think it's important. The car culture, the thing was a great success. I ended up talking about street trees with people from the festival. That says the shame that the improvements in it, that spread down to 9. Someone's been killing the trees. We should do something about that. So I don't know. I'm not responsible for the letters that you've been receiving, but it mirrors a feeling in the community that they like the trees. They want more of them. And it benefits us as council members to have that one-on-one interaction and to hear people. So it's possible to do quarterly car shows and then a big annual one. I think the demand is there. That's all I got. Thanks.
I think Ever has comment.
I have nothing further to add. I think everything has been said. Thank you everyone for your work. Keep it up. Thank you.